Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes a moment comes and we embrace it. But sometimes moments come which, in the happy routine that they are, we miss the moment. And the reason I keep gathering people here together on what is one news broadcaster of many, but a few of you watching both on television and now these days many of you online, many of you in India, many of you across the world, is just to highlight the summation that, listen, there are many things that are clawing at your mind space on a day-to-day basis. There's a smorgasbord of information that is being thrown at you. Just take a breath, a pause for the cause, and watch this. This is something that is so innocuous. It's like a drone. It's something so simple. It should not be a big deal, but it is. Because every week that is passing, in the 2-3 months that all of us have been busy discussing elections, okay, and covering them, the Indian Space Research Organization is cracking away step by step, one sure-footed exercise and test after another, and closing in to the first mission ever done by this country, which is going to put people in orbit and beyond. What you're seeing on your screens is the design of this vehicle. I don't want to call it a shuttle, but in a sense, it performs the role of a shuttle. It's called the Pushpak Viman, and you're seeing an exact scaled-down version of it, which is being used for aerodynamic testing, having completed yet another successful test. Those of you, including our guests, would remember that when it completed its first test, we had this conversation. So here we are. It is the culmination of the design stage. Many more things to do. Group Captain V.N. Jha joining us. He's been the former Joint Director of DRDO. Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt is with us. He's the Director of the Indian Space Association, that is playing a pivotal role in ensuring that there is a conversation between the private sector emerging in space in this country and the existing Indian Space Research Organization. Wing Commander Sudhakaran joining us on the broadcast as well, and Tapan Mishra, the Director of the Space Application Center and Physical Research Laboratory, is with us. Tapanji, let me begin with you, sir. Can you help our viewers understand what this relaunch vehicle design actually is?
Yes, see, it is a precursor to our manned mission and also a wing mission. See, it's a dual role it has. Its control systems and everything will be for the as good as for the manned mission, but it is also having a first wing mission made by ISRO. In fact, in 2016, they had a splashdown in water, and it was a successful splashdown with the HEX mission, the same wing mission. And from last year onwards, we are having the 3 consecutive missions. That is a landing on a runway. You see, the landing on a desert or the landing on a sea is a much easier a task. But landing on a runway like an aircraft, totally without a human control on board or on the ground, is something very, very creditable achievement by ISRO.
Yes.
In fact, in the first experiment last year, they have done exactly on the center line of runway, but from the 4.5 kilometer height, they released it.
Okay, and but Tapanji, what are they testing here? Because this is not obviously an active shuttle, quote unquote, okay, with people on board. This is the fuselage and avionics which is being tested here, the design and avionics which is being tested here. What is on test?
No, it is the control system. That you can land at a 320 kilometer per hour speed and then break it and land on the center line. I was told by Somnath today that they have achieved the final braking within the 10 centimeter of the center line.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you there because there are people watching the broadcast, because what you're seeing on your screens is obviously not a large vehicle with people on board. So what is being tested, ladies and gentlemen, because remember, any re-entry vehicle, especially one that is supposed to function in the logic of a shuttle, does not have engine power. So you are doing just the avionics and control system tests. That means your computers are fast enough, good enough, accurate enough that without any intervention of a working engine, if they are dropped from a height, they can land on the center line of a runway. That is what is being tested here. Now, the reason that is fascinating is because this is being dropped from a height of nearly 4 kilometers, which means that the avionics, which is the control systems, have guided this example vehicle from a 4-kilometer height down to the center line of this runway without any human input. And if you can do it with a scaled down version, then of course the same avionics and the same computer systems can do it with a larger version. General Bhatt, let me bring you back into this conversation. Now, obviously we've been busy with elections, but those are now over, so we can get back to our important conversation about where the country is going beyond politics. Can you give us an overview now? What is the word in the ecosystem about the ramping up of this Gaganyaan missions?
As you're aware, the Gaganyaan mission is going as per the plans, and like Mr. Tapan Mishra mentioned, a splashdown experiment was also done where the recovery vehicle was also brought into the sea and tested. And this entire Gaganyaan mission and the tests which are being carried for it to be human ready, for us to be able to send human beings into space is in a very advanced stage. Yes, there are many more experiments to be done before it reaches its final stage, when we will have 3, I assume, human beings going together in the space capsule, going into space and then coming back. We are all looking for it, and what we are very happy is small but significant support, for which the private sector is also being involved into making small components and some subcomponents.
Okay, so some things are of course still under wraps, sir, and I understand why. But literally I'm being told that literally from the design of the space suits, because we will have to build them indigenously, to the design of component parts, and including in part of the software coding, an ecosystem approach, not just an ISRO approach, is being put in. Is that correct, sir?
You are right on that. Definitely, it involves much more than the ISRO labs. It will involve contribution and even cooperation internationally.
Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reason we're having the telecast is because if you scale this back to 60, 70 years ago, early 1960s America, different circumstance, different logics, different reasonings for their space program at that point of time. But between 1962 and 1969, 7 years, 1% of the population of the United States of America was dedicated to the task of putting a person on the moon. You're looking at nearly 300,000 people, 3 lakh people were working on one project, okay? Now, this is no longer the requirement, but it is the potential scale of what is to come. Now, let me address a few technical questions before I go on the larger question with Wing Commander Sudhakaran. Dr. Jha, come in on the technical part. Okay, the technical part is that we know the Russians have a capsule re-entry mechanism. It's a parachute that drops a capsule onto the sea. We know that Elon Musk is building a rocket-enabled re-entry mechanism, that the rocket itself fires thrusters to achieve a soft landing either on a platform out on the sea or a platform inland. This, what we have seen, looks like a design similar to the space shuttle, where you have something that looks like a plane that touches down. Now, of the 3 competing designs, why would we have preferred or thought of this one?
Well, Rishabh, to be very frank, I'm not very much on the same page as the ISRO's thought is there, and many think about it. When we test a vehicle, scaled down vehicle, we test it to the perfection when the entire system is integral to the single unit. Mark my word. If the entire unit behaves as a single unit, you test it to the perfection in the scaled down model, what configuration you have. Like, for example, if we test an aeroplane in the wind tunnel, we have that scaled down version, maybe 1/100th of it or whatever. And then we test it because entire thing is a single system. But when you test a vehicle which has got the other functionality and other systems, like when you are going to touch down the RLV on the runway with the scaled down model, COG, you don't know COM, you don't know the weight distribution inside the cockpit, you don't know the entire systems, you don't know, and the parachute, which is decelerating the entire thing of that scaled down version, will not apply the same aerodynamic configuration when it is for the larger vehicle. You know, these are the things where I felt completely different on the page. A year back, when the last March, the April test was done, I had written an article. RLV is ISRO on the right track. And I was quite critical about some of the things that they had planned about it. So I'm not pretty sure if ISRO is on the right track while testing the systems, which is slightly different.
So obviously, obviously you have to build it, okay, and then the proof of the pudding is in the eating.
I'm telling you something different. Because then you can't apply the same equation, same parameters, what you have achieved of that scaled down version to the larger variation. So while testing for the deceleration, while testing for the landing, it cannot be the same equation. It will not behave the same way. I hope CEMILAC, Center for Military Airworthiness, or some other testing agency or some other certification agency was on board with the ISRO, different from ISRO. You know, again, mark my word. Right now, General Bhatt was telling you something about the human space program. I'm very critical of human space program. The last test, what was done of the ejection of the module at 4G, at 0G actually, it was done at 0G when the deceleration was happening. And then they had rejected the model. I was very critical. If there was a CEMILAC sort of certification agency, they would have outrightly rejected the entire thing.
Okay. So let me stop you here for the interjection that's required. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason why it is a major jump from putting satellites in orbit versus human beings in orbit. Okay? Yes. Because the risk of failure and of course the impact of failure is then lethal. Okay? So it's not a small leap, it's a major leap, and we are a long distance away, let's not kid ourselves. But it is a systematic approach that is taking place. Now, we can have the conversations as we are, okay, about whether a model itself in a sense proves it or making this is in the right direction. You can even have our conversations on whether you want to have the rocket soft landing which SpaceX is doing, or you want to go through the much simpler process of having a sea drop, which is far more software simpler than what it is we are attempting right now, which is where the space shuttle did it. So let me get Wing Commander Sudhakaran into this. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, is there, after having identified the 3 astronauts, the mission is 3 days, 400 kilometers in orbit. Why do we need personnel on board a space flight when these days AI and drones are doing everything? It's a conundrum which I wanted to explain to our viewers, because on one direction we are saying that even the Air Force one day will all be all drones, but in space we are saying no, we want to put people there. Is it just a matter of prestige, or is there a practical logic behind it?
I'm actually surprised how you read my mind, because that was exactly the point that I was going to cover. 7 years back, I wrote a paper called Akash Yodha, and I submitted to the National Security Council. Air Force is staring at a problem of sorts. The autonomous landing that we have achieved is one of the many jigsaw puzzles that we have just solved. In fact, while drafting the technology vision document 2047, I've covered a separate para only for the Air Force. Because the kind of regime that we are entering into is the generative AIs, as Sam Altman has already said, that he's going to burn $100 billion USD every year behind evolving generative AI. And that means accelerating R&D from the womb of a machine, which means the next generation of combat platforms could very well be simulated and designed in a digital environment. That means we are not very far off. We may like it. We may say that I wouldn't accept it, but many of them who say they wouldn't accept it.
I'm sorry, sir, but you're going to have to explain that to our viewers. When we are saying simulated and designed in a digital environment, ladies and gentlemen, what he's referring to is that computation not only finds solutions, computation also provides the database of problems for the AI to find solutions to. And they can do millions of times faster than real life. So they can do millions of landings per day as opposed to one physical test which we've done here. That's what he's referring to. Sir, finish your point.
Yeah, so, we are staring at that kind of a possibility. In fact, as recently as 2 months back, I personally wrote a letter to the Department of Science and Technology to please look into it. The kind of money that we are investing is not even 1/100th of what corporates are behind. Each of the four bigs, Tesla, OpenAI, Microsoft, and Google, have all put in more than $100 billion. And for what? It is precisely for this. And if the first domain that will get conquered, because today in modern war, we know what it means to achieve air supremacy. And if the combat air platforms are going to be revolutionized in unprecedented ways known to humanity, we are staring at kind of a challenge which we will never be overcome. Rishabh, I have to put it on record today that for developing a nuclear bomb, India did have the luxury of 25 long years to be able to put it up. The problem with AGI singularity is the moment the first guy breaches the line, it is not going to allow the second guy the luxury to even cross it. The nuclear cozy club is an example of that fact, because the world which has already made it doesn't want the world which has not made it to have it. This is what is going to happen to India, and India needs to understand this. In fact, I'm very critical of the Prime Minister, who is going on a spree of a world shopping spree to say that we will do collaboration and partnership in AI. Please understand there is no collaboration and partnership possible only in this specific domain. Reason is because nobody wants anybody else.
It's a winner takes all kind of phenomenon. So let me again put a lot of things in context for people what you're watching. He's referring to the nuclear cozy club. That is that 5 powers who had developed nuclear weapons by the 50s said we are going to build something called the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, the NPT, and the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, so that nobody else can develop a nuclear weapons. That hasn't held good because others have, including us. But let me get General Bhatt into this conversation. General Bhatt, let me then rephrase the question for people watching the broadcast. Obviously, there is a whole trend out there that is suggesting that computers and drones are the future. But we are looking at human beings in space. Is it just a matter of prestige, or is there a practical reason also for it?
I agree with you, and no doubt, the whole scientific community is also convinced that AI, regenerative AI, robotics are going to replace human beings to the extent it is possible. But whatever state we may reach, and we are reaching to, human beings are still a very, very important component of this whole cycle. If, say, theoretically we reach the moon tomorrow, or we occupy planet Moon or planet Mars, is it to send robots? Or it is also to make human beings to be able to stay in multiple planets? That's what the aim of even what Elon Musk talks about. It is the test of Gaganyaan, or to send human beings to moon, to space itself. The aim is what human beings can do there in space, or can we occupy space? Can we be in space? Can we survive there? Can we do activities there? It is very different from doing it with robots. Robots would be, yes, they may be utilized at many stages, even at the testing stage or maybe even later. But human presence has a different level of achievement, and any nation or any scientific community would like to achieve that.
Okay, so demonstrated capacity, we are far from it, but demonstrated capacity to have the ability to safely put a person or persons into space and safely bring them back. This is a demonstrated capacity which we are working upon. So let me get Tapanji back into this conversation. Sir, why is this important? Why is a demonstrable capacity of putting people into space and safely bringing back important for India?
Yes, that it's a civilizational requirement. Let's say tomorrow, that a human being goes to some other planet and occupies it. Will there be Indians? Our race will be there. We have to ensure that our presence in future. Otherwise somebody else or some will take all the cake. So that is one of the long time requirement. It is exactly the requirement, in which all the expedition has been done, whether Columbus have discovered America or anything. All the course of history got changed. People invaded and all it is changed. So this is one requirement. Human being is most important. And you see the last 2 wars being fought in this country, you see, in the world, you see there's a lot of technology has been used. But at the end of the day, the war is won or lost by the boots on the ground. It is finally the human being present, not the machine being present. It decides whether you have won the war or not. So this is the important thing. And to the moon mission, our man mission, why I say this is an important step, that next will be the orbital landing mission. This is a two-pronged approach. One approach is to test the sensor, control system, and algorithm, and take for a very toughest approach, that is the landing on a runway. Is one of the toughest approach. And the moon mission, the man mission will have another approach, splashing on the water. And this, I think that when this experiment, they upgrade to orbital experiment, as Somnath has told. So we'll see, we'll be moving closer. And there is 2 different experiments is being done for the same objective.
Okay.
So
you are saying, yes, a path is open, and we're having several parallel conversations here. So I'm trying to focus them and explain them as we go along. The path is open for a capsule kind of return as well. It is possible. That's how the Soyuz operates, and has operated successfully. In fact, more successfully than some would say the shuttles, because the shuttle program has been shut down because of safety concerns. So, okay. So now let me get Dr. Jha back into this conversation, but Dr. Jha with a question. Okay. When we talk about demonstrated capacities, the ability to launch human beings into space is one such demonstrated capacity. The ability to then do space docking is a secondary stage of demonstrated capacity. Then the ability to return somebody safely is the third stage of demonstrated capacity, and this all of it is happening in near Earth orbit. Okay. Because then the fourth ability is to land on a foreign body, and the ability to retake off, redock, and then return to a near Earth orbit. That's at the fourth stage. So we are currently at stage 1 of stage 1. How important is it to have the ability to do all these things in-house?
Well, to be very frank, Rishabh, if USA had done this space shuttle things, donkeys of years back, there's no reason why we should not be able to do it. RLV, I'm not sure whether it is on the same line as the space shuttle, because to my knowledge, there is no life support in the relaunch vehicle. There is no human space into the launch vehicle. There is no astronaut missionary configuration in loop into the testing of this thing. So I'm not sure what entire program is there, but whatever it is meant for, it could be sending, important small micro satellites, nano satellites, or smaller forms of satellite, multiple of them, in one go, and launch it from the Earth, go to the orbit, inject into different orbits there. That all those things can be done and come back onto the same runway and go again the next time. I'm not sure whether it is for the human or not. Right now, I'm convinced it is not for the human. But very fact that you mentioned about the 4 stages of the things. Right now, we are at the stage 1. In the stage 1, when the program was announced in 2019, that the same day I had told you on the Eurospace program that the entire program seems to me as a short-sighted, because there are so many of the testing to be done, human rating to be done on that day. In 2019, I had spoken on your channel that it has to be certified for the human rating, and the folly came to the light.
Okay.
The fact
all
is
right.
that,
Okay. All right. So your issues are noted. So let me put this back to Tapanji before I bring you Wing Commander Sudhakaran again for the last word. Tapanji, now the Americans did it in 8 years between 61 and 69. Okay, from nothing. Now this is proven technology. It doesn't. Some of it needs to be reinvented because we can't copy it. But the theory is now very well known. But also the tolerance limit is 0. The Americans lost a lot of people and had to do multiple launches. Remember, it was Apollo 11 that eventually reached the moon, and then Apollo 13 had a critical mission failure and had to abandon mission, and we all know, movies are made about it now. But the tolerance level is 0. We can't have any loss of life, and therefore we have to get it right, exactly right the first time. So even though we have 80 years of better technology, the need to get it right is how important, sir.
One thing I must tell you that even if somebody has developed a technology 50 years before, they will never share with you. They will share only tidbits and the peripheral of that. You actually, from my experience, I can tell you that the same technology when you do here, we have to almost reinvent it. Let us be very clear, nobody is going to share the knowledge with you. It's also perfunctory knowledge will be available and some photographs and some results are there. So it is our own learning, and this learning we have achieved it. That is absolutely noted. And the second is that we don't have the luxury of losing people. In 60s, you can always tell pilots to go to almost like a suicide missions. But today it is not like that. Today there is a lot of regulations, a lot of awareness and all. So we cannot afford to lose people. So what we have to perfect the technology, the algorithms, and the sensors so that we minimize the loss of people. And that's the most important aspect of the today's technology day.
Okay, so it has to be perfect, and that's the bottom line. It has to be perfect because, like I said, it's not about just putting people on space, it's about getting them back safely from space. That's the test, and that's the proof of the pudding. I'll leave the last quick word with Wing Commander Sudhakaran. Okay, Wing Commander Sudhakaran, on the issue that you've raised, okay, which apply to most frontline science. It applies from designing better weather prediction systems to self-driving. All of these rely on some basic backbone infrastructure which AI is bringing, which honestly few of us understand. What do we need to do to actually empower that backbone in India?
Technology. Underlying doctrine, indigenize it. We cannot outsource strategic consultancy. We have people we just went for the Boston consultancy group.
I'm sorry, sir, we're losing your audio. I don't know why that is. Can you check, please?
Ishak, may I just tell you something more?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead, Wing Commander. Go ahead.
Yeah. What I'm trying to say is the first thing before I sum up is indigenize because strategy, technology as well as niche technology. Nobody is going to give it free to you. That is always the case, and that will always be the case in the future. The problem with the past or in the future is that in the past we could still get lucky time to indigenize. Now we no longer have it. So therefore, We need to concentrate on energy efficient, spend our resources there, and we need to reach the demographic dividend.
Okay. Since we only understood a gist of what you said because of poor audio, I'm going to come and have a separate conversation on this because you need supercomputing in India. You need all of this to happen as well, and it is a separate conversation. Come back, Group Captain Jha, quick 10 seconds, sir. I'm out of time.
But look, whatever development we have in the machinery, human is the inseparable part of the space mission, because it is not only the dropping of the bombs that we are going to the space. We are going to study the human physiology, human psychology, human behavior in the space, in the weightlessness, and many other things. It's not only the military program, it is a civil program. When you go and test the chemical part of it, make the various sort of illumination of it, many tests are going there. About 33,000 odd tests have been done, and this could not have all. Some could have been achieved by the humanoid or the AI, but everything cannot be done by them. It has to be done by the human.
Okay.
And so it is required. Whatever development we have, last point is that human has to be there in the space to study all these researches that is going on in most of them, if not all.
Okay. So we can disagree on the prioritization. We can disagree on the urgency of matters. We can disagree on techniques, but we have a consensus that you have to have the proven ability to do all of these things, that this is not going to be given to you by others who developed it 50, 60 years ago. You are going to have to literally reinvent the wheel, and all of it, not a part of it, not some of it, not most of it, all of it, and perhaps even better. And when it happens, then the frontier that is space, which is being unlocked as we speak, you are part of that club that was there at the beginning. You're not the person, as the New York Times would put it, sitting and knocking with a cow from outside in the racism that we've experienced for our technicians and engineers for the past 60 years. So it's a step in the right direction. We are chipping away. Watch this space.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.